music got you skanking, now you're thinking.
It's coming on a positive vibe. It's a feeling that you just can't describe.
Big every time on the 1 foot.
Times 10.
Can anybody tell me where this island feeling comes from? Island feeling. Can anybody tell me where this island feeling comes from? You see, I need my fix, don't need to get high. 'Cause it's a natural feeling that burns deep inside. When you know what it is, but you can't describe.
What is surfing to me? Right? That's fun. That would be the initial thing. That was for me. I did it because it was fun. You know, and I do it now because it's fun. But I do it with my family. You know.
It's like home. It's like life to me. And I think like for some people, actually for all people, there's something that usually you find yourself attaching to. And for me, ever since I can even remember, in fact, since I can't even remember, but I know that I've always had this sort of love for the ocean that apparently started when I was very young.
My dad surfed, but my dad's funny. You know, he surfed, played slack key guitar, but he never really taught us. We picked up stuff on our own. So that was the case with surfing. I grabbed one of his old boards and pretty much taught myself.
My mom would take me to the beach, and I always felt like it was where I belonged. Maybe I was a fish in a former life.
And I don't consider myself a surfer in the sense that I just surf. I've always made that distinction. I'm not a surfer dude, you know, kind of thing. I surf, you know. That doesn't define me. Like surfer has this kind of connotation, especially in this world we live in, you know. But I mean, I would just say I'm just, you know, it's just being part of this place, this land, you know, this culture, local and Hawaiian.
The reason why it was appealing was because you didn't have a coach. I mean, I remember being on a t-ball team when I was like 5 years old and just hating the fact that I had a coach. He was just yelling at me, you know, come on, Holly, run faster, you know, and I was like, oh gosh, you know, I just wasn't into it, you know. And so for me, the appeal was the independence, you know. And I think surfing provided sort of an outlet, like a kind of a solace, a pu'uhonua, an escape, because it was a place where I could be, and all the drama that was involved with on land, or even maybe stuff with family, or you can just sort of lose yourself in the ocean. It has that sort of healing properties, you know, the water.
Maybe in some ways I would critique the popularity of it and the coolness of it. That is to say, you know, and the attitude that comes with it, and the associated cultural kinds of things that operate associated with surf culture, which is global culture. You know, the attitude that comes with that. You know, competition. Surfing has always been competitive. I mean, even traditionally, it was. You know, it's a sport. You know, I mean, and sports are competitive. It's, you know, and but some of the mean-spiritedness and some of the attitude that comes with, you know, boarding culture, you know, whether it's skateboarding, snowboarding, you know, and then the extremeness of sports like that, I think, in some ways, I don't know if the right word is, in some ways cheapens the purity of the experience.
Too much attitude these days in the waves. Everybody has something to prove with some sort of manhood and stuff, and it's like, it's sad. I remember when I grew up, people used to actually talk in the water to each other and hoot, you know, like, whoo! When somebody catches a wave, it was almost every wave somebody caught. If it was a good wave, like, whoa! Whoo! Rah, oh, nice one! You don't hear much of that anymore, unless maybe with your group or your friends and stuff. So it's nice to, you know, I think it'd be nice to kind of bring that sort of culture of understanding back into the waves, and then it's a lot more fun.
I think youth have attached to that, so they're attracted to things that are cool, and there's nothing wrong with that, I guess. I liked it because surfing was cool, but it wasn't something that like I said, if I'm the only one in the water, that's great. I don't have to show anybody else. You know, it's not about showing somebody else. It's more for it's for my personal thing. Whereas part of this, you know, mediated society that we live in, you know, people are, you know, oh, video it, post it, take a picture of it, you know, sell it.
I mean, people complain about how crowded it was. You look at pictures of when Duke guys used to surf, it was crowded. They shared waves and they cheered each other on and they had fun. And they probably weren't coming out with just, you know, I think insecurity breeds that kind of sense when you get people, you know, don't take time to say how's it to somebody and try and actually get to know someone. Because then you have to share waves, right? When you say hi to someone, you can't just cut them off. And I think we need more of that where people actually learn to respect, like, oh, that's, you know, I think that guy lives here. Hey, how's it? Nice wave. I guarantee a local guy, even if you're not from here, they'd be like, well, you know, and then eventually be like, oh, your turn, go, bro. So, I think, unfortunately, the attitude sort of gets in the way of those kinds of experiences.
Because of that competitiveness, because everybody wants to be cool and do this great thing. And great is, I don't blame people for wanting to surf. But it does, you know, there's only so many waves for so many people. And in some ways, it's too bad that it's professionalized too. This is before my mission. I surfed quite a bit. And I guess I was chasing waves, but now I don't have that time. But when I get into the water now, and there's these guys that I know that they're everyday guys. I know they're surfing all the time. And they're surfing every wave that, like, it's their last. And I think that's just against what, you know, it's like, share the waves. You know, some of us are just, you know, surfing just because we, you know, but they feel like they gotta catch every wave and show everybody how good they are, and that's just against what I believe in when it comes to surfing. It's like there's this, which is why I think there's hostilities in the water. People of varying places, and people don't understand respect in the water. People, and so both ways, whether it's locals or Hawaiians or non-Hawaiians or non-locals.
The identity of surfing in Hawaii is a much different experience for how it's been written and constructed from the outside. And so surfing as it started here, and then it, you know, all the way through Duka-Hanamoku era, and it has its own sort of flair to it, and it wasn't necessarily this beach culture of sun and blankets and sex and the type of stuff that you see, like the Beach Boys, and that type of culture is actually kind of transferred. It's sort of developed in California in the 50s, 60s, and then it makes its way back to Hawaii with a kind of this migration of Californian surfers who come back to Hawaii in the 60s, 70s, and it sort of, you know, it clashes. Because the identity of a lot of Hawaiian surfers was not defined in the same ways that the California scene was. And I think the California scene was quite surprised when they came to Hawaii and they weren't welcomed as long lost brothers.
I just assumed surfing be a local Hawaiian thing, which if that's all it was, it'd be great. But it's not that, and it's over, you know, it's kind of over the top now, which is unfortunate, I think, in my opinion. Because I figure I'm from here, I would be surfing anyway. If it wasn't so popular, a lot of these people wouldn't be surfing. Wouldn't know about it, maybe wouldn't want to do it. Which would be great. More waves for those of us that are from here, you know.
These guys were sort of rebelling against what it meant to be normal, and they were redefining themselves as these dudes. These guys that did crazy things like not work and go to the beach and hang out at Malibu. But part of that experience, which is ironic, and becomes troubling later, is they adopt their idea of Hawaiianness and what it meant to be Hawaiian as a part of rejecting American society. Then the idea of real Hawaiians existing sort of complicates their world, right? Because they've sort of adopted this sense of what it means to be Hawaiian, and they've totally like made their own culture, and then, you know, how do you deal with the fact that, wait a minute, there's actually real Hawaiian people that really surf, especially with like they started surfing competitions and such, and when they first started them, they didn't even invite Hawaiians to surf in these events. Ironically, the Duke Classic that eventually evolves into the Triple Crown in 1965, it was an invitation-only event, and you know, there weren't Hawaiians invited. I think maybe there may have been one. Kealoha Kai'o, I think, may have been invited to the first one. But there are a bunch of other people that were kind of like, in fact, Eddie Aikau was one of them, and Ben Aipa. They showed up and they're like, what is this? Yeah, this is Sunset Beach. We surf here. Who are these guys? That beach culture contributed to this sort of clashing of worlds, because they had developed this identity of their own, in which they had sort of embodied what it meant to be a surfer, which also meant Hawaiian. But then when they came to Hawaii and met real Hawaiians like Eddie Aikau, they didn't know what to think of them. The following couple of years, you get Eddie and Ben Aipa, and then eventually Barry Kanaiapuni, and then it just sort of opens wide open, and then a lot of like local surfers start surfing those events, and then they start totally winning all of them. And I think that must have been sort of confusing too, because I think initially the guys who had organized the event just saw it as like this California crew that was going to come and have their vacation and reconnect with their homeland. I think they failed to like consider that it wasn't actually their homeland. It was somebody else's homeland who still lived there.
I surfed Tahiti before it became, you know, what it is, and that's kind of like, wow, mellow crowd. Just one of my best surfing experiences was catching a wave in Tahiti. Perfect wave, not even crowded. See the land, see the coral reef below, no winds, just glassy water. Caught a wave. It was throwing behind me, barreling behind me, kind of over my shoulder, and it was open face in front of me. And I was just standing there and like, didn't work, you know, I could have worked it up the face, you know, to do it, or I could have stalled for the barrel, but I was just like, wow, this is Tahiti, and this is, you know, some of the best experiences I've had surfing is either on my own in the water, experiencing the aina, as we've discussed it, you know, which is both land and sea. So just kind of experiencing the beauty of this place, you know, in a very, you know, individual way with the environment. But next to that, probably the best times I've had surfing was just me and my friends in the water, and just having a joyful experience. And now that extends to my kids, my family. You know, some of the best experiences I've had in the water. In fact, the best experiences I've had surfing have been with my friends, my family. You know.
As I mentioned earlier, surfing has been more of an individual escape for me, and maybe it doesn't work that way for everyone, but for me, like, it's always been a place where I can feel like in tune, where I can have a clear mind. I would love to just go out and like I'll probably right after this, you know, after a long day, if I have time, I'll go out by myself, and it's a way of like really just getting balance. It's like therapy, you know, without the therapist. I don't need a couch to lay on. My couch is my board, and I think for a lot of people, you know, that maybe have grown up with sort of convoluted childhood or whatever, you know, that you have to find your place of escape, and for me it's always been the ocean, where I receive inspiration. Goodness, it's where I found the testimony of the religion I belong to. It's where I found God. It's where I found my love. First kiss I had with my wife was in the ocean. It's where I found inspiration, answers to prayers of where I want to go in my life. And so, but yeah, so for me it's home, and and maybe not for everyone, but like I said, I've been a fish in the premortal life.
Tell me where the solid feeling comes from.